Hello, this is Amber from Love Fit, and I am talking today about the breath. Why is breathing, sounds obvious, but why is breathing so important? Why is it something that I harp on about all the time to my pregnant ladies, my postnatal ladies, and that includes the women who are maybe 1, 2, 3 and beyond years postnatal. So it doesn't really matter whether you've got a much older child. As always, it's the first thing I always say when somebody says, look, Amber, I've got some issues going on. What do you recommend I do? And I think quite often people are a little disappointed that I don't come out with a list of exercises they should do. So I've said this before, I will say it again. Exercise, per se, exercise is kind of the last thing in the list of recovery tools. Now, please, 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 as always, I'm not saying don't exercise. Do. It's very, 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 very important. We really need to exercise, but especially in that early postnatal period, the first point of recovery is about getting the breath established before we then add in sort of alignment. We look at nutrition, all of these things, and then we look at the right movements and how to kind of function well. Okay, so just to make that clear, I'm not saying don't exercise. I really, really want you to. But in terms of restoration and recovery, breathing, the breath, is really important. Okay, so why? Why do I go on about the breath? I think maybe I haven't explained this so much to people before, so here is a chance. So your big breathing muscle, the diaphragm, which often is depicted as this kind of dome-like muscle, sits here under the ribs. Quite often, a lot of people have a very overactive, tight, what we call a hypertonic diaphragm. So why would that be? It's often from poor posture. People who do spend a lot of time sitting, which most of us do, hunched over a steering wheel or a desk, it causes lots of tightness. I won't go into massive sort of biomechanical detail here, but all the points of attachment on your diaphragm will mean that when you're in that kind of compressed position, the diaphragm gets tight. Also often stress, whether that's from lifestyle, work, mumming, whatever it is. Stress means we tend to then create a faulty breathing mechanism. We often breathe much more shallow. We breathe into the chest rather than into the ribs and the belly, which again can cause to this kind of over tight diaphragm, this hypertonic diaphragm. So when people do have this overactive diaphragm, it sits lower in your abdominal cavity. And when it sits lower, there's obviously then less space. If you think of it relaxed up here versus sort of being tightened down here, you've got less space here. And less space within here means more pressure. Now, hopefully by now, and if you've been following me for a while, you will understand that more pressure is not a good thing, particularly with the pregnant and postnatal body. Anybody who's had any kind of abdominal surgery, even back issues, anything kind of in this area, increased pressure is going to mean more pressure down on your pelvic floor, more pressure out on your already weakened abdominal muscles. And so basically we don't want to add pressure to that area, okay? So what this means, as I've just explained, if you've got a tight diaphragm and therefore increased pressure in your abdominal cavity, it means that all your kind of daily life activities are a little bit more risky, okay? Now, again, I don't want to sound like sort of, health and safety gone mad. I'm not saying, oh, no, you can't move a chair, you can't pick up your child, it's terrible, you're going to get prolapse. But it is also really important to realise that because we do so much bending, lifting, carrying, everybody, regardless of what you do in life, we all move in our day. We get up and down off the toilet, we get up and down off chairs, in and out of the car, maybe we walk our dog. Some of us are very active, we heavy lift in the gym, or you might lift a child, you're shopping. There's so many things we do every day, and of course all those actions, particularly this kind of squatting action, if you have too much pressure in your core and you're not using your breath to manage that pressure, and your body can't manage that pressure well by itself, then, because of the repetition, and as I say, we're doing these hundreds, maybe thousands of times a day, then there is, of course, an increased risk of some pelvic dysfunction, weakened abdominals, etc. Okay, so what I try and do is teach my women how to reduce the risk of these things happening. And as I say, I'm not out there scaremongering people saying, oh no, you can't possibly do anything. But what I am saying is breathing is easy, right? We all know how to do it. So certainly early on when people are kind of thinking, oh, what can I do to start healing? We start with the breath, okay? Simple. Now I'm going to kind of go through the breathing techniques in a separate video, but I just kind of wanted to go through that and make that clear that, yeah, that's the kind of explanation behind why the breath is so important. And your diaphragm and your pelvic floor work, simultaneously with one another. So when your diaphragm is relaxed, your pelvic floor is naturally lifting up, and when your diaphragm contracts during a breath, the pelvic floor pushes down, which is why if this diaphragm is kind of chronically tight and not properly relaxing, that you will have just constant kind of pushing down of the pelvic floor, because the pelvic floor won't be able to release. If you kind of think of the core as a canister sort of moving gently up and down, that's what happens as you breathe. So we start with the breath. And if we get the breath right and we normalize the tone of your diaphragm, then your pelvic floor is going to work better, your abdominals will work better, and by breathing properly as we move and go about our daily life and all the activities we have to do just on an everyday basis, you are going to be in a much better position to not cause yourself any injuries or indeed worsen symptoms that may already be present. Okay, so check out my next video, which will be actually about how to breathe properly, and I will see you over there. Okay, thank you. Bye.